their production costs are going to be higher. So it should be interesting to see how that plays out over the next few months. But that's the main headlines for the news this morning. So let's talk about some of the Forex ideas that are on the table. As you can see, CAD JPY, CHF JPY, and Euro JPY here at the top of the screen right above my head. Those pairs did not make the list this morning. Top of the list for me has been Euro CAD. I want to see if we're going to hold the 50 EMA and come higher from there this morning. We have the Asia high set at about 147.89, we'll call it 147.90. Then we have the high of day so far set around 147.95, almost up to this 148 price level. So seeing, again, in Forex, it's very rare that we see whole numbers. Whenever we see like a 1.48, which I would call it more like a whole number for Forex trading, that significant level to me, with the fact that we've already shown resistance to it this morning, shows me that it's going to try to break out past 148, but for now it's having some issues. The reason why I'm long biased here is because of the market sentiment line. On Friday, we had a strong move up. That market sentiment line still, since the start of the Asian session and through the London session, has still held in that buying sentiment zone, still holding above that 50 value. Now, as this comes a little lower here and starts to break underneath the 50, break underneath this short-term support zone, that's going to kind of turn me off to seeing if we get a long opportunity in the next few minutes. But I've been watching this closely this morning to see if we can find a D1 or an A1 entry. The problem here, we could have been looking to trade it early this morning at like 5:45, 6 o'clock, trading it up towards high a day to take advantage of this pop. The problem is that there is no bullish divergence on the 1 minute. As you can see, price action is flat right here while this RSI is rising. So there's no divergence there to set us up to take a position. Really, you could have been looking to buy it right here. This would have been a great price, 147.84. Your stop would have been like 6 pips away, very, very tight, and you would have been able to get just about 2R, like 1.8R, trading up to high a day. Now, is the idea done for the day? Of course not. Market sentiment is still in the buy zone on the 15-minute. We're still at the 50 EMA. The only thing that I don't like that it just did was it crossed the 8 and 21 EMAs down. So since they're now crossed down, short term, we could be in a downshift. Well, we are in a downshift, and that could lead us to seeing this drop a little bit lower. Hold on, where's my 200 EMA? Why can't I see it? Oh, it's way down there. That's why. So where this goes, I'm not sure. But we're going to keep an eye on this because we're watching the other CAD quote pairs to come higher as well. So let's look at GBP CAD. This one had the closest thing to an entry so far this morning. So Friday, you can see it moves up through ADR, through its average daily range. It's a pretty strong move. Then, to start the week, the Asian session also continues that move to the upside. And even through the London session, we break out for a new high. Here, as we transition from the London session into the New York session, we do get this 2-candle formation. This looks like a really solid A1 entry formation. The candle is coming off the 21 EMA proper. The body of the candle closes higher than where that pullback started, so that's a strong right leg, we call it. The issue with this is that the RSI was not in proper position at the time of this candle formation closing. The RSI really got pulled through the market sentiment line and pulled through that red trend line as the next candle was bullish. So it's a very tough entry to take. If you're watching it live, maybe you have some confidence to lean into it and take it, but I was more focused on EuroCAD than I was focused on GCAD. Here in this 2-candle formation, notice we have bullish divergence on the 1 minute. Now, it's not a D1 entry because it's not coming off the 50 EMA, and that's where we've tested the D1 to work best. So this is coming off the red 21 EMA, but there's still bullish divergence here with this rising RSI and falling price action. That bullish divergence could signal to you that this will hold the upshift here and continue to the upside and hold that 8 EMA and see this thing extend up here towards ADR. Now, again, didn't take the trade, but it still kind of fits the bill for probably the best trade of the day so far. If we look here on the 15-minute, let me blow this up. The divergence overnight is something that a lot of people in the group chat were talking about. If you draw the divergence correctly from the RSI high yesterday into today's price action high set in the Asian session, you can see there is divergence there. That divergence is broken, as you can see in my notes, when we push for a new high here at the start of the London session as we move from like London into New York. Once we push through the divergence line and we set a new price action high and we set a new RSI high, because if you double click this, you can see this RSI high is higher than where it was on Friday. Once we did that, the divergence is broken and it really doesn't go against the trade setup at that point. If it had respected the divergence, if price had not gone higher here, then yes, that would have been something to knock against this trade setup. But the issue here, if you read from my notes, is not the divergence. It is the fact that the RSI was not proper. Look at the market sentiment line. It's very bullish. Price action is very bullish. The EMAs are coming into an uptrend. 50 EMAs above the 800. You just need that 200 to come up a little higher. So the bullish bias is very much there. And if you read my notes again, on the higher time frames, the daily and the 1 hour are both long biased. The 4 hour is a little indecisive. So with that, 2 of the 3 time frames are long biased. Overall, this would more likely than not move higher today. It's just about being precise with the entry signals, and I didn't want to lean into something on a Monday. But this looks really good with the market sentiment line like this. It looks really good with divergence being broken because price and the RSI both come higher than they did to set the divergence. So that breaks the divergence. I just think it could have been a little bit better with that RSI position at the candle close. So that's GBP CAD. James was watching NZD CAD. This is not a pair that's normally on my watch list, so I had to add this for everybody this morning. But look at the market sentiment line holding the buy zone. Same thing as Euro CAD, same thing as GBP CAD. However, this one broke the Asian range to the downside. So to me, this divergence on top is still in play. So if we were looking to trade it, we would first want to look to take profit at this divergence line. The risk reward to that divergence line is only 1.3R, not even close to 2R. So it's really not that great. However, it's still a 2-candle formation. The RSI is in good position here. I like that it breaks above the bodies of the consolidation start where it started the pullback. So I do think you could see this continue higher today. It's in an upshift. It's got the perfect market sentiment. And now this is the third CAD pair that we're looking at that's bullish today. Look at EuroCAD starting to come back up off the 50. This is the next closest thing to an entry is EuroCAD. And what we're going to be looking at here, if we do take a position, we're looking for 1-minute bullish divergence. We don't have any yet, but we're going to keep an eye on that. So those are the 3 CAD pairs and how they're working together to set us up this morning with a really solid watch list. We have EuroCAD, bullish, GBP CAD with an entry, kind of bullish, and NZD CAD with an entry. Not my favorite pair. This also really is not something that I'm looking at to trade, but still bullish as well. So all 3 of them with that CAD quote correlation presenting in the same direction, which makes sense. Now, Gbpnzd was also on the watch list this morning. I had like this weird bullish bias towards all the GBP pairs today. However, none of them really are presenting great setups. First of all, if you look at Gbpnzd, with the market sentiment line starting in the sell zone and then pulling up into the buy zone, that shows indecision. With us trading towards the 800 EMA, that gives us a target. Once this shifted down in here, it's kind of tough to see, but you can see the 8 EMA was above the 21, and then it crossed underneath it. It only just recently got switched back above into the upshift. Once it shifted down, I was like, I don't know what this is doing. Swapping liquid 50s, swapping market sentiment like this is never a place where I want to start my week. So if you look at the rest of the GBP pairs, look at Gbp Usd. The reason why this did not make the list, it's got a good looking market sentiment line. It hit its ADR here at the start of the Asian session, end of the Asian session, start of the London session. It hit its average daily range of 80 pips. Now it's moved through that average daily range, but once we max out ADR, I don't know how much more it's going to move through, so that's why I never trade maxed out ADR pairs. Same thing with GJ. This maxed out its ADR in the Asian range. Gbp Chf is almost maxed out its ADR. This has a really good market sentiment line today, and seeing this come off the 50, I maybe should have been paying more attention to it, but there is no bearish 1-minute divergence that we would need to send this lower as a D1. Put this on the list just to come back to it later. This had a good entry right here, coming off the 21 EMA, it looks like, at about 4 a.m. That's before I'm awake, but that looks like a good trade there as well. And that follows Friday's bias. You have Friday entries coming short as well, so it's just continuing that bias, and it's really easy to do, just following the market sentiment line. It's holding under that 50 value, and that's exactly what we wanted to see if we're going to maintain that short bias. Gbp Usd made a massive move up on Friday through ADR. Now today, with these EMAs coming together, and with the market sentiment line starting in the buy zone and then dropping under the 50 value into the sell zone, with both of those things, EMAs coming together and a swapping market sentiment line, both of those are reasons for me to not have this on the watch list because it's indecisive. You want to see perfect market sentiment. You want to see cleaner EMAs than this. Today's the day we let this shake out. Maybe it has to move sideways today because it had such a big move on Friday. So you just don't need to have it on your watch list, and that's why that did not make my list today. USD CHF, see how oversold this market sentiment line is? This always seems to happen with CHF pairs. Whenever it's oversold like this, I always get a little hesitant on taking trades because I don't have a lot of back testing that tells me that this is a part of my pattern. I'd like it to be between the 30 and the 50 value. This dropped as low as 15, so it dropped way lower than I normally like to see it. However, The short bias is where you'd favor this to move versus the long bias. So that was why that didn't make the list. And then same thing like GJ, this is USD Jpy. Market sentiment is very oversold, but also it maxed out average daily range. Now, Jen had a question. A couple of people asked questions. When you see the market sentiment line high, like or low, for example, on UCHF or high like it is here on GCAD, she said, let me read her question. She wrote, so I have a question. For EuroCAD and GCAD, the L50 is actually way up near the overbought line. Wouldn't that be a higher probability of reversal, and thus wouldn't we be looking for a D2 instead of a D1? No, because normally trend continues, and we don't want to forecast a D2 reversal. The D2 really should only be something you consider once the divergence is set in and it's breaking the 50 EMA going the opposite way, kind of like what GJ is doing. If we had bullish divergence on the bottom today, which you don't because the RSI is still falling there, price is still falling. If you had bullish divergence here, now that it broke the 50, if it was to hold above the 50, that's where you'd come in and look for the D2. But until that break of the 50, I don't look for D2 reversals at all, Jen, because I want that trend to continue. I know more times than not, it will continue. Remember, quantify the liquid 50, quantify the market sentiment line. Here today, this is between 30 and 50 all day. That's telling me that the sellers are clearly in control. And even if it does break the 50, that doesn't mean to buy it because there's so much selling pressure. I don't want to lean into that and try to call it as a reversal. Same thing on USD CHF. Just because the market sentiment line is oversold does not mean it won't come lower. Price is lower now than it was when the market sentiment line was oversold. When the market sentiment line was oversold, we were 20 pips higher than we are right now. So that's enough proof right there to tell you that just because it hits oversold doesn't mean price can't come lower. I hope that that answers the question, Jen. But simply put, no, we want to favor the zone that the market sentiment line has been in all day. Look at EuroCAD. This, I'm hoping, will still set us up for an entry and still come higher today, only because the market sentiment line is in the buy zone. Yes, there's divergence there, but overall, the trend is very clear. So let's look at the 1 hour, just so we can see. On the 1 hour, market sentiment is in the buy zone. The 8 EMA is above the 21 EMA. That's bullish to me. I don't look at the other EMAs. Here on the 4 hour, 8 is above the 21. Price is outside the 8, so that's bullish. But the market sentiment line on the 4 hour is in the sell zone, so that's kind of indecisive. On the daily, market sentiment line is in the sell zone, and this looks like it's trying to, looks like it's trying to break above the 21 today. So I would say 4 hour and daily are a little indecisive. 1 hour is long bias. So not a super clean long trend, but overall, but more long biased than short biased. The fact that the market sentiment line here on the 15-minute matches up with that, the fact that it's not steep and falling towards that reset level, all feeds my bias that this should come higher today. So that's what we're looking at there, Jen. I hope that answers the question if she's here live. Big move on GCAD so far, 30 pips. Risking 9 or 10, it's a good trade. This should probably touch ADR today, about 40 pips from the entry. What would you grade EuroCAD? So the divergence would definitely be a knock. It has to be. If I was to trade it short, or excuse me, trade it long while it's in a downshift, that would also be a knock. So probably a B setup. I don't think it's a C setup yet. It would be a C setup if I was to trade it from down here before it shifts up, but I'm not in the trade yet. I'm waiting for it to shift up, and then I'll look to trade it. So it'll probably be a B setup as long as it shifts up and as long as the market sentiment line holds the buy zone. Good question. Good question. Any questions on this GCAD setup? Any question on why NCAD is really not my favorite pair at all? Any questions on Gbpnzd or EuroCAD? Morning, Gerber. Hey, bro, do you ever adjust your second divergence reaction? For example, GCAD, if price made a new high and the RSI didn't, would you redraw the trend line? No. So you could, but it would still do the same thing for you, bro. This is why you got to blow up the TDI. So what did I say? This divergence, I said, is broken because the RSI and price action came higher. So if we blow up the RSI and we draw this line, now this is rising. See that? That's rising. Now this, if we match this up, this is also rising. So now there's clearly no divergence there at all. So either way, whether you didn't move it or you did move it, once the divergence is broken, it's going to show that. Does that make sense?